Hello, my name is Peter Yates, and I'm speaking to you as the World Mission Officer for our diocese. Looking at Matthew chapter 9, verse 36, Jesus said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the labourers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out labourers for his harvest." Warm greetings to you from my home in Leicestershire as we gather for worship, remotely, online, in our homes, at a time when we think about Jesus' call to love our neighbour and to pray for the Spirit to inspire us as a Christian community, that we might be able to begin renewing life in God's world. As we begin to emerge blinking into the light as the lockdown eases, so we're being confronted once again with the brutal realities of debt and racial injustice. And by these words that speak so powerfully to each of us at a deeply human level, I can't breathe. Words that also remind us in our current context of COVID-19, the reality is that some groups of people have suffered considerably more than others. Injustice is a structural and systematic element which is deeply linked with poverty. And so in the midst of our COVID pandemic, our attention has been drawn to another deeper, more persistent pandemic, that of racism, and that justice is not experienced in the same way by people of different ethnicities, classes or backgrounds, and that injustice has been there in the midst of COVID-19. Across the world in these last few months, some of our Anglican sisters and brothers have suffered severe food shortages or a complete collapse in their livelihoods with nothing to fall back on. Others, for example, especially the poor and indigenous groups in Brazil and the Philippines, have suffered abuse or worse at the hands of military or police forces during this time. In St. Matthew's Gospel, Jesus went throughout the area teaching and healing. He had compassion on his people. We have a picture of a crowd of people, needy people, harassed and helpless, leaderless, crying out for support, spiritual, pastoral and practical. And as we read, Jesus had compassion on them. The Greek is probably better translated as Jesus was filled with tenderness towards them. And that's the very heart of Jesus' ministry, that tender love that God in Christ has for his people. For most of us, crowds of people make us anxious, whether their cry is for justice or bread, and we recoil from them in neediness. We're fearful that we will be overwhelmed. But Jesus sees something very different. Where others see brokenness, helplessness, a source of despair, he sees beyond to a glorious harvest. He sees the renewing and the renewed life of God in those he loves, his people. And he sees transformation. And of course, in this reading, he calls his disciples and us to join with him in that transformation, in reaching out to others. On hearing these words, this call to mission, to a glorious harvest, the challenge to be one of those few labourers. Well, today we might think, well, that's all very well, but that's not great timing now. We need to wait until we get things sorted. It's too soon. We need a bit more time to straighten things out. And then when we're sorted, well, perhaps we can begin to think of reaching out to others. And that's very natural. The current pandemic is, of course, a unique and extreme crisis. But for many churches, it's simply another extreme crisis. Accustomed precariousness and vulnerability, the churches in many societies are so often the communities of resilience, and there is hope that when they reach out. So those churches inspire confidence and bring moral leadership to others in their capacity to help repair, rebuild, reconstruct their lives, their communities. and they need the expressions of solidarity and support from within the wider global Anglican family. So you might well ask, what can I do in the face of this pandemic? The good news is that our mission agencies, such as Christian Aid, CMS, USPG, Tear Fund, Jubilee Debt Campaign, are able to help you. They have international contacts and structures throughout the world, and they're seeking to support the poorest and neediest, giving them not only health, but also self-esteem, belonging, what it means to be human, what it means to be family, community. And it's taken the church onto the streets, into the marketplaces, into a whole host of different spaces and gatherings. And the labour of such mission has involved, as it so often does, joy as well as perseverance. It's a holistic mission, transformative, renewing the whole person and the whole community, bringing a harvest of inclusive justice. Local mission, in the spirit of Jesus, gazing on the crowd, helpless and harassed. It does what the most effective sort of mission does. It addresses the deep heartache of these people. Christ-like mission, local and global, begins with a tender heart, with the eye of compassion that really looks out on the world and really pays attention and sees the potential in others in the midst of their pain and anxiety and loss, that breathes through it all, yet through the Spirit seeks to breathe out hope and creativity and encouragement. But it also requires courage and commitment to take these first steps, for things to happen. And when it does, the transformation is great. The harvest is plentiful. The Anglican Church around the globe lives and breathes resilience and hope. In the midst of all of this, it strives for justice for all. We too are called to look with tenderness on our world, to stand with solidarity with our sisters and brothers who face extreme challenges as they reach out in mission to others, but also to look with tenderness at our own local communities, to serve those around us pastorally, practically, and to cry out for an inclusive justice, a justice for all. A time when we can see a world that has no need for food banks, for campaigns like Black Lives Matter, or for homeless charities, that all may breathe freely and take their place, perhaps near the centre of our communities. I hope that you will be able to help in this mission. Thank you.